Hey there, guys. Happy Friday to you. It's your boy Choppadong, and I am coming at you from a loud house with a birthday party going on in the basement. So be ready for outbursts of screaming teenagers. That is what happens on a Friday from time to time inside my household. Hopefully, your house is quieter and calmer, and you can focus on some DFS. But as luck would have it, we're going to talk about the too tight cash game player pool of picks. And our record is now 18-8. We went 1-1 yesterday, lost on the early slate, won on the night slate. In fact, the night slate was a whole lot better. We placed fifth in a 100-man league, got ourselves a nice 8-to-1 ratio on the payout. So that worked out very, very well and got us right back on track for the week and for the month. But we're still hovering over 55 to 60% win rate, which is really, really good. As long as we maintain that, it's kind of like a baseball team. You're just trying to inch above 500 more and more and more. And the more you do that, the steadier your win rate gets, the more profitable you are in cash games. Of course, we can use these cash games to determine where we're going to go in tournaments too. And we'll talk about that maybe down the road. I just wanted to show you really quickly on Fanduel and DraftKings how to narrow down that player pool. Use the ownership projections as a consensus pick in terms of who is in a good spot. Generally, those garnering the most ownership are the most obvious matchups. That's where the herd goes. And we want to ride with the herd in a cash game. We want to play those chalky pitchers and those chalky bats because then they can't really hurt us if they have a good game or a bad game. We're hoping there's a little bit of differentiation in there on the positive side for us where other people have made mistakes in getting too risky, and then we come out smelling like a rose on top. Been working so far. No reason why it won't continue to work all season long. So I'm just trying to drive the point of the fundamentals home to you that you don't have to dig and do a bunch of research anymore. It's been done for you. Here at DFSArmy.com and in a lot of other places, that's why we get all of the people pointing at the same guy and generating that consensus that we trust. Bigger slate, though, you're going to see watered down ownerships. When we set up on FanDuel for 5 lineups, 2 uniques, optimal mode, no randomization, no stacking. We unchecked that checkbox there, and we're going in order of projected ownership, highest at the top. We start with a pitcher. Sean Manaea going up against the Giants. Giants are the second most run-producing offense in the league right now, so that's a dangerous spot for Manaea, but Manaea seems to be the clear-cut consensus favorite. Robbie Ray's about half that ownership, and then we've got a few other also-rans down here, Eric Lauer, Javier, whatever. These guys, don't take these guys for the expressed purpose of hoping to get leverage on Sean Manaea. That's the wrong reason in a cash game to take a lower owned play. You would only take this lower owned play if you are convicted yourself in the research that you have done and you believe that that player is the safest pick on the slate. 9 times out of 10, it's just where the ownership lies. I would include Robbie Ray just as a second option, but he is too volatile, too up and down for me, and the others are just too low owned. If this guy has a bad day, you're screwed. You've got no other way to make up for what, the chalk did to you by going off the chalk and picking that lower owned pick. It's not worth the risk when you're only turning $1 into $2. It is worth the risk when you're trying to turn $100 into $100 or something. That is when you take those risks, you take those gambles because you realize that you're either shooting for the top or it's busto. And you don't care about min cashing, and you don't care. Those are nice. It's nice when you do it. It helps a little bit towards your bottom line, but you're going for the win. And in that's when you make those pivots to those lower owned plays. You hope Sean Manaea implodes, and you hope that Nestor Cortez has a good day. Whatever the case may be, that's when you've got a reward for that risk, that's when you take the risk. Cash games, that is not the time. So just play within the ownership, and it is what it is. Let everybody else go screw up. Will Smith at 5% probably is not owned enough to matter. Rowdy Tellez looks like the chalk. Vladimir Guerrero, even though he's been rough lately, is still going to garner some ownership. Yandy Diaz, it's not bad. Tyler France, Candelaria are okay. But see, we get down in here. Brad Miller may be great. Jared Walsh may be great, but they're not. Yuri Gurriel might be great, but they're not generating the ownership to make sense for cash games. If you are convinced they are a cash safe player, they've hit 3 to 4x value in, say, 8 of their last 10 games, and they're in a plus matchup today, then yeah, you might include them in your player pool. But if you're not looking that deep into those numbers, you cannot go too far wrong if you just include these chalky guys and move on. I mean, you cannot argue that Yandy Diaz is a fairly consistent player right now. Going up against Baltimore puts him in a good spot. He's leading off. That gets him a lot of at-bats, 4, 5, potentially 6 at-bats in a game. And those are opportunities to score points, either via a walk or reaching base on an error and somebody else driving him in where he scores a run and picks up 3 points, whatever it is. Each additional opportunity is what you're looking for in a cash game. You can't predict home runs. You can't predict doubles with 2 men on base. You can't predict any of that. You've got to predict the opportunity. So you try as hard as you can to stay in the top 5 spots of a lineup where you can. Sometimes for value purposes and cost purposes, you've got to get outside of that number, but you should not be comfortable when you do that. You should be very uncomfortable when you're forced to go outside of those top 5 spots. Looking at Javier Bias has not been good again, but he's getting a lot of ownership. Some of these ownerships really and truly are just wrong. It's not that the ownerships are wrong. It's that the people generating the ownerships are looking at the wrong things and they're wrong. But that's okay. That just means that when these all fail, the cash line is pretty low tonight. It won't be. It'll be pretty standard. But hopefully you understand a little bit of where I'm going with that. Even Gleyber Torres, DJ LeMahieu, I would include. Jose Altuve, definitely include. Trey Turner, probably include. Now I've got a lot of second basemen with some multi-position availability, and I've covered some bases. That just means there's a lot of options out there tonight. That's okay. Some slates are bigger than others, and the bigger slates generally have more options. Jose Ramirez, Josh Donaldson's been pretty good lately. Willie Castro, don't know anything about him. Optimizer probably won't pick him anyway. Would not take Suarez. Down to LeMahieu's about good for third base, and will include Wander Franco. At shortstop, not Suarez. Trevor Story's been good. We'll go ahead and include him. I know his game log has been decent. And, of course, coming off of the 88 points, I don't know why he wouldn't be higher owned than that. People usually chase those points. But he still makes sense. If you look at his game log again, he's hitting, what's 3x his salary? 9 points, 9 to 10 points. He's hitting that or more pretty consistently. I think in his last 10, he's missed maybe 2 or 3 times. That means he's 60 to 70% of the time he's bringing value. That's consistent enough for cash games for sure. Outfield, Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, great spots. Yelich, everybody loves Yelich. Buxton, Trout's a staple. Ohtani's very popular. Everybody loves Ohtani. Robbie Grossman leading off in Detroit, usually pretty good. Hasn't been great this year. Looks like old Jesse Winker's making a return. Austin Hayes in the 2-hole in Baltimore is probably okay. Hunter Renfroe, a little up and down for me. I know he hit a bomb the other day. George Springer leading off would be okay. Mookie Betts has been great lately, but I don't think the optimizer is going to pick up on him, being that it's only a 2.68 fantasy point per dollar outlier. You would have to probably put him in there yourself. And, again, if you're going to make a lower owned play or two, it isn't a pitcher that you would do it. It can be in a spot like the outfield where Mookie Betts is playing really, really well and is very, very consistent. And you might take him over, somebody in a tougher matchup. If it's Ohtani or whatever, you might pivot off of him and take a Mookie Betts. That would make some sense. When I go to optimize those lineups, I'm really just looking for who's in all of my lineups. Rowdy Tellez, Robbie Grossman, Jesse Winker, cheap guys. Aaron Judge made a lot, and that's fine. Aaron Judge has been really, really good so far this year. And I'm coming down here and I'm looking to make sure I don't see more than about 3 bats from any one team in my lineup. I see 3 Milwaukee bats, 2 Yankees, 2 Detroit, and a Seattle. That's okay. If you like that combination, it's great. As long as they're all in your player pool. Player pool right now is what? 27 players. That's a little bigger than usual, but it's not bad. We usually try to keep that thing in the 20 to 25 range. There's 3 Yankees and 2 Milwaukee guys. 2 Yankees, 2 Milwaukee guys, a Cleveland, and this one's a little bit more balanced, right? So you can just run up and down the pick. Now, if you don't, let's say this one here, you look and you say, well, I don't really want Aaron Judge. I do want Mookie Betts. Then there he is. You can swap him in, and now he can sit in the middle of your lineup, and you've got a little bit more diversification if you don't trust the Yankees bats tonight. But it's hard to go wrong with Aaron Judge. It's usually hard to go wrong with Mike Trout. And that's just where you end up sitting on a night like tonight. So let's dive into DraftKings. And as I said, come back when the lineups confirm and take a peek there. But DraftKings sets up the exact same way. We go into the old MLB main slate. We make sure that our optimal mode stays on. 2 unique players. Let's make 5 more lineups here. Again, I'm just making more lineups than I'm intending to use. I intend on using 1 lineup. But I want to see a few options. Sort by projected ownership. Uncheck that box, and let's just go through the pitchers. Pitchers, we're going to have more options naturally. Look at that, 23, 25, 20, all the way down to 18% owned Christian Javier. So these guys are all okay. We'll let the projections pair up the two that it likes probably the most. I'm not real keen on Robbie Ray, but on DraftKings, I'd probably allow it. Mitch Garver picks up some of the ownership, and you're down into the 7-8% range. These guys are all pretty much wide open. You would have to game log hunt and figure out which of these guys you like. Sanchez has upside, of course. Not that we care about upside purely in cash games, but it sure is nice when it happens. I mean, who was feeling Trevor Story last night when he hit 3 bombs, right? If he was in your cash lineup, which he was eligible for, but you might have taken a Bogarts over Trevor Story, and that's okay. Bogarts makes a lot of sense. I chose Trevor Story strictly because I wanted to save $200 and go bump somebody else in the outfield up a little bit higher. It worked out for me. That's called luck, and sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. Melendez has been pretty good lately if you're looking for a catcher in a cash game situation. Ohtani at first base is interesting. Ty France, Tellez. We're getting a little low on when we start getting down here into Diaz, but there's Diaz. Diaz, I know, is in a pretty good spot. These might be guys that I would include. I will occasionally break the rules and go for a little bit lower owned guy just in case, and he's expensive, so it looks like it's going to lean on Ty France probably anyway, and we won't even need Diaz. Now we've got very expensive bats here, so we're going to need some value somewhere, and I don't see it on this page. So we're going to have to come in somewhere else. Jose Ramirez is not going to be cheap. There's your value in Brad Miller, Candelario. And then after the 10% mark, probably don't need to reach out. Bregman's a great cash game play. Josh Donaldson's been a great cash game play. In fact, I'd probably check him back and allow it. If the optimizer wants to pick him up, that would be fine with me. Javier Bias has not been great again. Corey Seager has been okay. Wander Franco is expensive. Urias again. JP Crawford's a little bit cheaper, but we're starting to get into the lower owned stuff again. But you can see how quickly this ownership washes out on a big slate night like tonight. I'm looking for Bobby Witt's been good lately, but he's expensive. I'm looking for guys that maybe are a little cheaper that can get me some value in my lineup. Aaron Judge, Jesse Winker is going to be popular tonight just because of that price alone. Mike Trout, Buxton again, Franmil Reyes is cheap. That's a good thing if he's got his timing back. Julio Rodriguez might be okay. Look, we might go ultra cheap in a lot of that outfield. Stanton's been fine. Miles Straw, if he leads off, is in an okay spot. Yelich, it's hard to go wrong with in a lot of cases. There's Grossman again. Probably won't be using him on DraftKings like we did on Fanduel. Mookie Betts down here if you really, really want to. Whit Merrifield's been pretty good lately as well. I don't think it's going to want these guys down here, but we'll see. I need to take a little bit off of these. Let's add some today instead. How about that? We like both those guys. Why not add a 100th of a point and change that the way the optimizer likes me to change that rule? It's not going to pick them up probably anyway. There's Ray and Savali. That's interesting that's who they took. Cheap pitcher because the bats were problematic. If there's enough people that are on it, that's why they're choosing Savali, because they need the bats. So 25% of the world is going to be on Savali. That's a good thing for us because it allows a little bit of flexibility with Judge. And so there's Winker in every lineup. There's a lot of Jose Ramirez, which is fine, but there's Ty France at first base again. So if you really didn't like first base, you can scroll down here until you find who was not used at first base, and there it is. It's Ohtani. For $5,900, that's interesting. It requires some punts elsewhere, 2 in the outfield, and then, of course, a punt pitcher. Yeah, it's a risky play to take that pitcher under $6,000. It's really, really risky, especially with Robbie Ray and Savali. I would not use that lineup. It looks like it's Robbie Ray and Savali everywhere. That is interesting. That is really, really, really. I might go in, I might modify that and take somebody that I think is a little bit steadier. But it is going to cost me bats. There's no doubt about it. It's going to cost me bats. And I've seen times when I do that and Robbie Ray posts a ceiling performance and makes me look like I don't know what I'm doing. But I'm telling you, he is not usually trustworthy. You're gambling a little bit tonight. And it might be a night where I might not even build a cash lineup in DraftKings because I don't want to gamble. And it feels like a gamble to take a punt pitcher and an unsteady SP1 and then rely on a lot of high-priced bats that can really go bad on us. So your best bet for a cash game in DraftKings might be to go up in the pitching and manually choose from some of those guys, the cheaper guys in the position bats, and hope for the best. If so, you are actually opposite everybody else, And that would actually lead to more of a tournament build, but in a cash game, it might also be the way to go. So that's food for thought. I'm not a DraftKings pro. I'm just showing you how to build the pool on both sites at the same time so that we can then get you pointed in the right direction. But the record is 18-8 on Fanduel, and we're hoping for 19-8 coming out of tonight. So peace out, homies. We will talk to you over the weekend.